טוב, שלום וברכה, Mishneh Torah Rambam. Hilchot Deot Perek Dalet, chapter 4, Halacha Kaf Aleph, or Tet Zayin. Derech Harechisa. With regards to bathing, says Rambam, keep in mind, of course, that in those days, very few people, that is to say, in the Greco-Roman world, only the extremely wealthy had bathing facilities in their home, a very tiny proportion of the population. Everybody else went to a public bathhouse. Rambam says, the normal thing is to go to the bathhouse once a week. This was considered the norm in those days. And as Rambam writes in Hilchot Shabbat, Perek Lamed, which we will look at in one moment. I'll bring that up. You should now be able to see Hilchot Shabbat Perek Lamed, is that correct? Rambam writes, Perek Lamed Halacha Beth, Ezehu Kibud, speaking about the concept of L'chabedet HaShabbat, to honor the Shabbat. Ezehu Kibud, Zeh she'omeru hachamim, shel niswa al adam lilchos pano, yado v'reglo b'hamin be'erev Shabbat. This refers, for example, to that which the Hachamim spoke of. In other words, that a person wash their hands, face, and feet in hot water erev Shabbat, on Friday afternoon, mipenei kavod HaShabbat. In other words, that's the bare minimum, to wash one's face, hands, and feet. It is preferable, obviously, to bathe completely, the entire body, and this was the norm. Here, the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat, here Rambam speaks. Excuse me. Here Rambam speaks of the bare minimum. All right, so we return to Hilchot Deot. Perek Daled Halacha Kaf Aleph. So Rambam said, Derech harechisa shikanes adam lamerchas mishiv'a yamim l'shiv'a yamim, every once a week. V'lo yikanes samuch la'achila. It is not advised to go to the bathhouse, which was a very hot, steamy place, shortly after having eaten. V'lo keshehu ra'ev, nor when one is quite hungry. Rather, having eaten and having waited a short time, shall we say an hour or so, to having eaten, then that's a good time to go to the bathhouse to bathe. And it is advisable to wash one's entire body with hot water, but not extremely hot water, literally water, not water that one would burn oneself with. But except for the head, it is good to bathe the head with very hot water. Obviously, we're not talking about scalding hot water, but as hot as one can bear, shall we say. That's Rambam's intention. That is healthy, it is correct. And physiologically, it is a fact that the head can, the scalp, the head can handle, can bear water of a hotter temperature than the rest of the body. That's a fact. And second of all, the bathing in hot water, rather hot water, is healthy because it increases the blood flow in the body. It opens up the capillaries, etc. And then the rest of one's body, having washed one's entire body first with hot water, now with lukewarm water, warm water. That is now lukewarm, I would say. And eventually to rinse off in cold water. Again, these bathhouses were places that were very hot, very steamy, and the purpose of bathing in ever cooler water is to cool down from the extreme heat. But with regards, that is true of the rest of one's body, but not for the head. The head, which was washed with hot water, very hot water, in fact, one should not rinse off in cold water, and nor even in lukewarm. And what we just said now is true for the summer, but not in the winter months. It is not healthy not a good idea to bathe in cold water at all in the winter months. I imagine this is in order not to catch a cold, etc. One So as we said, we're talking about a public bathhouse, and in these public bathhouses, you had various rooms. You had and pools of water. You had a pool of extremely hot water, and you had a pool of less hot and lukewarm and cool water. There were no showers. It was all from the form of a large bathtub, large pool, in fact. And there were also saunas. They also had rooms in which it was just steam. So this is quite a, if not an exertion, then at least it impacts the body, all this heat and steam. So Rambam says one should not do this for extremely long periods of time. You shouldn't do all of this, be there until you are completely worn out and perspiring profusely because of this process of bathing. You shouldn't spend there too long. When one feels that the body has soaked in all the heat and steam it should and can, once you feel that you've done what is necessary, you should rinse off and leave. Rambam continues. Shema yeh tzarich linkavel, and a person should check to see whether he needs to go to the bathroom before and after having been to the bathhouse. V'chen bodek adam asmo tamid kodem achila v'ahar achila. Similarly, a person should check similarly before and after eating. V'kodem be'ila v'ahar be'ila, and before and after sexual relations. V'kodem sheyiga v'yitamel v'ahar sheyiga v'yitamel, and also before and after exerting oneself, whether it is exercise or some form of work. And before one goes to sleep, and when one wakes up in the morning. Hakol asara. So all these various situations that I've mentioned come to 10 altogether, 10 various situations. 5 times 2, in other words, before and after bathing, before and after eating, before and after sexual relations, before and after physical exertion, and before and after sleeping. It is interesting to note that the Rama, Rabbi Moshe Isalis, at the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, basing himself on the Rambam here, says something to the same effect. Allow me to call it up just a moment. Share a different screen with you. Okay, this is Shulchan Aruch, Bar-Hayim Siman, Beth, the last seif. The Rama writes here, "V'yarvil asmo lifnot boker u'erev." The person should train themselves and make it their habit to relieve oneself morning and evening. Shehu zarizut unikiyuth, which is good for physiologically health terms, and it is good and it is conducive to health and to running one's life correctly, to have regular habits in this regard. That is what Rama writes here. And one of his sources, at least, is what the Rambam what we just saw in the Rambam. Very well. So, all right. So Halakha Kaf Gimel now. Perek Dalet Hilchot Deot Halakha Kaf Gimel or Yod Zayin. כשיעשה אדם מן המרחץ. It's over here, הלכה כ"ג. כשיעשה אדם מן המרחץ, having left the bathhouse, ילבש, having got out of the water, etc. ילבש בגדו, one gets dressed, ויכסה ראשו בבית החיסון, and one should wear something on one's head, כדי שלא תשלוט בו רוח קרה, so that one will not get a chill on one's head, which, if you recall, we washed with very hot water. And now cold air may cause one to get a chill, or worse. وَأَفِيلُ بِمُتَحَمَّةٍ صَرِيخ لِلزَّهِرِ. And this is true even in the summer months, because the difference in temperature is still pronounced. وَيِشْهَيَ حَرْشِ يَثَيْ عَلْشَ تِتْيَشَفْ نَفْشُهُ. Takes a little while for the body, for the person to recover, as it were, from the exertion of the bathhouse with all the heat and the steam. وَيَنُوحْ گُفُو وَفَسُورَ أَحَمِيمُث. So when one has cooled down and relaxed, وَأَحَرْ كَخْ يُخَالْ. And then it is healthy after this to eat something. وَإِنْ يَشَانْ مَعَتْ كَيْشَ يَسَى مِنَ الْمِرْحَاصِ قَدِمَ أَخِيلًا. And if one is able to sleep a little bit or rest after bathing before eating, هَرَيْ زَا يَفَعْ عَدْمُهُ. This is very, very highly recommended. Kaf Dalet or Yod Zayin. לא ישתה אדם מים קרים כשיצא מן המרחץ. One should not drink cold water immediately upon leaving the bathhouse. ואין צריך לומר שלא ישתה במרחץ. No, it should not be necessary to state that one should not drink when in the bathhouse. One imagines this has to do with the extreme heat of the bathhouse, drinking cold water. It's too much of the difference is too great and not healthy. If one is very thirsty and cannot put off drinking, one should mix some wine or honey into the water and drink. And if one is able to rub some oil on one's body, this is recommended in the winter months. Rambam says, after having dried, before dressing, this is also a good idea. The next thing Rambam mentions is Hakazath Dam. Hakazath Dam is bloodletting, which was considered a medical procedure to prevent various diseases and conditions. And in fact, it is recommended, at least by some, that if a person can donate blood, occasionally, this is considered to be a good idea. It renews the blood in the body. So Rambam writes, "Lo yargil adam asmol hakiz dam tamid." One should not go to the bloodletter, who was a kind of practitioner, people who did this. Frequently, all the time. One should do this only when one very much needs it. And it is not a good idea to do this in the heat of the summer, nor in the cold of the winter. The right time is in the beginning of the spring, in the month of Nisan, around Pesach time, and perhaps also in the month around the time of Tishrei, which is the beginning of the winter, of the autumn. However, when a person has reached 50 years of age, a person should not do this at all, because it does weaken the body for a time, letting blood or donating blood, and it is not recommended from that age onwards. Nor should one donate or have a bloodletting session and go to the bathhouse on the same day, because again it is an exertion. Nor should one donate blood or let blood and then immediately embark on a journey, again because as an exertion the body is weak. Nor on the day when a person returns from a trip somewhere. And also, trips even today are something of an exertion, perhaps. In those days, how much more so? On that day that one lets blood, one should eat and drink less than usual. Again, because the body is recuperating. One should rest on that day, and one should not exert oneself or go for a walk on that day. Now, halakha kafua or yotet. Shichrat zera hi koach haguf v'hayo u'ma'or ha'inayim. Rambam says that the male's sperm is part of his physiology and is connected to his energy level, and his life, his health, literally the sparkle in his eye. What Rambam is trying to say is as follows. He says, a male who has sexual relations too frequently, haguf bale, this weakens and wears out the body, v'choho kale, and his strength diminishes, v'hayo ovadim, and this will impact his health negatively. Hu she'amar shalamo b'chochmato, so it says in Sefer Mishneh, al titen lanoshim helecha udrachecha lamachoth belachim. So al titen lanoshim helecha is admonition, not to engage in sexual activities too much, and therefore the obvious, Rambam will say in a moment, how and when. Rambam continues, halacha kav zayin, or your tithe still. Kol hashatuf b've'ila, a person who is constantly involved in sexual relations. Zikna chofeset alo, this causes him to age. V'choho tashesh, and his strength is depleted. Wa'ino kehoth, wa'reach ra nodef mi pi'u mishahyo, it may affect his eyesight. That is apparently what he said, what Rambam is referring to. By no kehoth, it causes halitosis and mishahil, and unpleasant odor from his armpit. It causes hair on his body to thin out and it will not return. And on the other hand, the hair of his beard, his armpit, and his legs will be increased. It will produce more hair. His teeth will loosen and fall out. And many other maladies will come upon such a person. Clearly, Rambam did not think that excessive sexual activity was healthy. I cannot state for a fact that I know that all of these phenomena mentioned here are factually true. But I do know that this was the accepted opinion amongst doctors at that time. Although it stands to reason that, as with many things, the correct approach is a balanced and measured approach, and not excess. Excess is almost always, in all things, undesirable and harmful. So Rambam now quotes explicitly from the medical wisdom of the day. Halacha Yod Toef still, or Kafheth. Omeru Hachme Harofeim. Ehad me'alef meth b'shar holaim. U'ha'alef mirov ha'tashmish. It is the common wisdom of the doctors to say that of 1,000 people, one dies because of this or that disease or medical condition, and the rest because of excessive sexual activity. If a person wishes to live well and be healthy, one has to take note of this fact, says Rambam. And therefore one should have relations with one's wife when he feels that his body is strong, he's full of energy, and he experiences erections without again and again without intending to. And even trying to direct his thoughts elsewhere. This fact, these erections continue. And he feels a certain heaviness in that part of his anatomy, as if literally the testicles are heavier, and the person feels and knows when this is what his body requires. Such a person, a man at that point, must have sexual relations with his wife, and it is healthy and the right. It is, from a medical perspective, it is the right and correct thing to do at that point. Lo yiv'ol adam v'hu saveh. This is halacha kaf beth. A person should not engage in sexual intercourse when he is having just eaten a lot. V'hu saveh. He is his body now needs to digest, which, as we said, requires energy. and therefore it is the wrong time to engage in another activity which also requires energy. Ulo ra'iv, and not when he is hungry. Ela hashi takela mazon b'me'al, but having eaten and having digested for a time. And one should again check before and after whether one needs to go to the bathroom, as mentioned earlier. One should not engage in sexual intercourse, not standing nor sitting. And not in the bathhouse. And not on the day that one goes to the bathhouse. Nor on the day that one lets blood. Or not on the day that one leaves on a journey or returns. Not before and not after. Says Rambam. This is now halacha kaf or lamed in the Machon Shilo edition. A person who follows these instructions and recommendations, ani arevlo, I am willing to guarantee, sheno ba lideh holi kol yamao, he will not be ill all his days, ad sheyazkin habe uyamuth, until he eventually will die of old age. Nor will he need a doctor. He will experience good, robust health all his days. Unless his constitution is naturally poor. Or perhaps at some point in his life he did not act in accordance with these instructions, with these recommendations, and it harmed him in some way, and that it may be too late to undo all of that damage. Or im tavo makath dever or makath basor la'olam, or if there is some kind of sickness, disease, or drought. In other words, external factors that may, as a result of drought, there usually follows in its wake famine, or many foods are unavailable, and this may affect him. And all these correct and proper ways of living one's life, this is all stated with reference to a person who is basically healthy. Aval but if a person however is ill, either his entire body or a particular part of his body, he has a medical problem, or a person who for many years followed and lived his life in an unhealthy manner. יש לכל אחד ואחד מהם דרכים אחרים ומנהגות כפי חוליו. Such a person needs to receive advice and act in a different way from what we described here, because what we described here, says Rambam, was for a basically healthy person. A person who has a particular medical condition requires particular procedures and remedies. As we find in the medical texts. And Rambam here quotes Shmuel HaBavli, the famous Amora Shmuel, V'shinui wasef tahilat holi. When a person makes a change to his regular habits, that is frequently tahirat holi, the beginning of some illness or some feeling unwell, etc. The body, in other words, requires and needs and benefits from regular habits. Changing those habits frequently leads to trouble. Rambam continues, Halakha Kaf Gimel or Lamed Gimel. I'm sorry. Kaf Bet, I should say, or Lamed Bet. Kol Makom She'en Bo Rofeh, a place, a town where there is no doctor. אחד הבריא ואחד החולה, אין ראוי לו לזוז מכל הדברים שאמרנו בפרק זה. If you have no reliable medical practitioner where you live, then it is highly recommended, you are well advised to follow religiously the advice that I wrote down in these chapters, says Rambam. Shekol echad mehem laharith tova hu mevi, because these things will only lead to good and not the opposite. If one has an expert doctor in one's town, one can, of course, consult with them. But generally, all these various tips and pieces of advice will stand a person in good stead, says Rambam. Furthermore, Rambam says, Kaf Gimel or Lamed Gimel, Kol Ir she'en ba'asara devarim ha'elu, a town where the following 10 things do not exist, are not to be found. En Talmid Hachamim rashai ladur betocha. It is not recommended, it's not proper that a Talmid Hachamim, literally a student of the Hachamim, and this is the correct term, Talmid Hachamim, as opposed to Talmid Hacham. Well, we'll speak about this more in a moment. And Talmid Hachamim rashai ladur betocha. Literally, it means a student of the Chachamim. In other words, a person who acts and lives his life based on forethought and his attitudes, etc., are based on the ways and the practices which are associated with Torah. Such a person knows that it is not correct to live in such a place and will therefore find another place to live. Whereas people who are not used to regulating their lives, people who adopt a happy-go-lucky approach to life without much of a plan, without taking heed of good advice, such people will obviously perhaps not care where they live. They'll think it'll be okay. Why worry? But that is not the way of a Talmid Chachamim, who is a person who is a Talmid Chachamim, literally a student of the Chachamim, referring to the great Chachamim of the Torah. Such a person knows that you do not simply assume things. You don't jump to conclusions about anything, nor do you assume things. It'll be okay. Why worry? Why consider the possibility that this is not a good idea? That is the way of Talmidei Chachamim. So what are these 10 things? Rofe, a doctor, because you or your family may require such a person. Uman is the term used by the Chachamim in many places to refer to the bloodletter, which was also considered a kind of doctor. It was a profession, and people did this at regular intervals. And because it was considered necessary, it was therefore also considered right to live in a place where such service was available. Uvet HaMerchatz, and a public bathhouse. Uvet HaKiseh, there is proper sanitation. Umayim Mithliim, Kamo Nahar or Ma'yan, and that a fresh source of water is at hand, such as a river or a spring. Uvet HaKnesset, and a Bet Knesset, shul. Umelamed Tinokot, and a person, usually a youngish Talmid Chachamim, who would teach essentially at first Mikra, the Tanakh, to the young children, because if a person is going to have children, then he has to educate them. Volavlar, this is a sofer, in other words, a person who was skilled in writing up contracts, ketubot, gitin, sefer Torah, mezuzah, tefillin, all the various things that need to be written. V'gabei tzedakah, a properly organized Jewish town or neighborhood. You have gabei tzedakah, you have people appointed by the community who receive and also demand, where necessary, money from each household in order to provide tzedakah, charity, for the truly needy. Uvet din makim u'hovashim, and also in every such town there should be a bet din, who have the authority to punish those and therefore to keep that society, maintain proper equilibrium and maintain certain standards and not allow things to get out of hand. Makim means literally to flog, where if a person is hayav malkuth, there has to be a beth din that is authorized to do that. Or hovashim, and sometimes it's necessary to jail, to place in some kind of some form of arrest. These things are necessary for the correct running of society. When criminals or sinners know that there is no price to be paid, things quickly unravel. That is the way of the world. That is human nature. I said we would say a few words about the term Talmid Hachamim. In all the accurate texts, all the manuscripts that we have, ancient manuscripts, whether it's the Mishneh or the Talmudim, Tosefta, Midrashim, the term is Talmid Hachamim, a Talmid, a student of the Hachamim, of the sages, not Talmid Hacham. The term Talmid Hacham can be understood to be referring to the Talmid, the student who is wise. He is a wise student, and that's also important and good thing to be a wise student, a student who is diligent and who applies himself, and he has the natural ability also to learn and to understand. That's all very important. But the term Talmid Hachamim refers to the student of the Hachamim. This was the term that was used always in the Jewish world to refer to people who study Torah on a regular basis, and we know that a person is required to study Torah every day, and acts in accordance with those instructions and with those concepts of the Chachamim. That is a Talmid Chachamim. It doesn't mean a person who is necessarily a great Chacham in his own right, but he is a student of those Chachamim. He follows their advice. He knows that these are the people to follow. He cares about what they say. He takes to heart what they say, and he tries his utmost to implement those things in his own life. As opposed to whom? As opposed to Amei Haaretz. Amei Haaretz are people who are less inclined to take everything the Chachamim say seriously, to take them at their word. In those days, in the time of the Mishneh, shall we say, or the Talmud, before and after as well, the majority of the people were not Talmidei Chachamim, but there was a clear and significant minority. I think we can assume something like between 20 and 40%, depending on the historical period, who were Talmidei Chachamim. This term is analogous to what the term that is used today frequently as in other words, a ben Torah, a person, usually a person who studied in yeshiva for a time and lives his life in accordance with those principles and those ideals. But the term ben Torah was not known to Hazal. You will not find such a term in Rashi or in the Rambam or what have you. The term is a Talmid Chachamim, people who are Talmidim of the Chachamim. These are the people who knew that upon rising, you say Birkot HaShahar, for example. And Am Haaretz, many of them would not say such a thing. They would not even Halal Shabbat, Has v'Shalom. They would not. Many well-known parts of the Torah, they would be quite religious and careful about, but certain things they cut corners, and in general their approach was a more frivolous and less serious approach. And these things also in those times manifested themselves in very specific, easily defined ways. In other words, a person was called a ne'eman if he was careful to make sure that all the food in his home or that he consumed was me'usar, and Trumot and Ma'asrot had been taken as required. And if he was more careful than that, in other words, he also was makpid about Tuma v'Tahara in his home, his furniture, his clothing, his own, with regards to his own person. This was the standard of behavior amongst Talmidei Chachamim. Most of the people were not makpid, were not terribly concerned with matters to do with Tumah v'Tahara, which is, by the way, not incorrect. In other words, it's not sinful. A person is not required, according to the halakha, to be makpid, to be pedantic with regards to Tumah v'Tahara all year round. According to the halakha, a person is only required to do this minadin during the rechev, during the shalosh revalim. Rambam discusses this in Sefer Tahara, Hilchot Tumat Ocharim. Rambam says at the end here of the very end of Hilchot Tumat Ocharim. You can see the screen, I take it. Halacha Yodara Yodbeth. Even though it is mutar min hadin to consume food and drink which is not tahor, Hasidim Horishonim Hayu Ochalim Holehem B'Tahara. It was the practice of the Chachamim. This was in Eretz Yisrael, because in Chutz La'aretz you cannot be makpid about Tumah v'Tahara. It was their practice to only eat food that was tahor, even though it was not terumah and was not part of a korban. So it wasn't required that it be tahor, but they were makpid to eat food that was tahor. V'nizharim min hatumoth kulan kol yemeihan, and they would avoid all manner of tumah all their days. V'hem anikraim perushim, and these people were referred to as the perushim. Perush meaning separated from the tumoth. And this was the norm amongst Talmidei Chachamim, but not amongst the majority of the people. So in those days, it was much more obvious, perhaps, to which camp you belonged. There was definitely this dichotomy within Jewish society between the Talmidei Chachamim and the Amei Haaretz. Amei Haaretz were less careful when it came to Trumot u'Ma'asrot as well, and not at all with regards to Tumah v'Tahara. This perek, which we've just completed, perek Revi'i of Hilchot Deot, was general advice, which is correct and proper for all people, for any Jewish person to follow, and for that matter, as long as it pertains to maintaining a good health, it is good advice for any human being. In the next perek Hamishi, Rambam discusses various types of advice and instruction and recommended behaviors for Talmidei Chachamim specifically. In other words, things that are not expected normally of the more average person, but of those who aspired to being part of the community of Talmidei Chachamim. There were many types of behavior and midot that such people tried to follow. And this we'll see B'ezrat Hashem the next year. We will stop here therefore.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael, or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.